The other day I was reading online. There's this case where this woman and her husband, they live with his parents in his parents' home while they were married. And after about almost 3 years, they got a divorce. And she tried and claimed his part of the property as their matrimonial home or matrimonial asset. At first, the divorce court said, yeah, because you live there, so the husband's third, half of the husband's third is hers. But when they appealed, the appeal court said no, because the whole house is actually the matrimonial home of the in-laws. So what's your take on this? Because after all, the Women's Charter said if it's your matrimonial asset, it should be half-half between the husband and the wife when the union breaks apart. Your thoughts?
See, you will actually get less if the grandparents break up, So instead of giving 1/3, you get 1/3 or 50%, or both 50%. But anyway, I think it's a issue that I think a lot of people are grappling with now. We know that divorce rates are going up, and this is a very common topic. We did a quick search online. There is so many law firms offering divorce support, and even one helping you to divorce in 20 minutes. Yeah, so I think it's important for us to understand. I mean, we had a lot of this trouble trying to grapple this topic that we're talking today, which I think does reflect the uncertainty, the questions out there, even though it is governed by legal norms, legal proceedings, precedents, but we know the High Court turned it upside down. Based on what we have read and understood, the legal precedents is that as long as you contribute financially or non-financially in terms of care, maintenance and all, you are entitled to 50%. Then this whole issue of inheritance and stuff like that. So I think we need to find out more, and should husband and wife be financially independent? Not saying hide your money, but always grow together, but still have that financial literacy, awareness of what's yours, what's his. We don't plan to divorce, but should that happen, there is a record, there's a contribution, we are aware. Some say the prenup might be the way to go, but in Singapore, the prenup may not be enforceable.
But Kevin, no one actually gets married just to plan for a divorce.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so if you make a matrimonial nest, to grow your family, you don't think anything about getting a divorce. You just want to make a home for yourself, your wife or your husband, have children, live happily ever after. But no one actually plans for a divorce. So how can you say that, you should actually plan to have your own financial independence?
See, we enter a marriage with our eyes wide open. If you do not have your eyes wide open, then something must be wrong. Now, for me, when I look at the issue from the surface, right, the base of the problem is you are living with your in-laws. At the end of the day, not just justified by law, anybody will say, but that's your in-laws' house. So for me, if that's the biggest issue, you are staying in someone else's home. At the end of the day, they give you a space for you to survive. Stay there, stay with us, we provide everything, settle. But when you enter the marriage, I think it's important to live independently. So if anything were to happen, then it becomes an isolated case between you and your husband and the kid, blah, 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 done. But now you are in someone else's home, claiming the gift that was given to him on paper. It was not by right, this is mine. Because at the end of the day, you only earn 1/3 of the home, but the home still belongs to the father-in-law. So I think couples should live independently, build their own nest independently, and if they want to commute or toggle between in-laws or their own home, then it's a separate matter. This issue becomes a lot more complex because you are staying in someone else's home and you're claiming someone else's rights, right? But that is just me saying on the surface, but the law would define it. What does the Women's Charter say?
Okay, according to the Women's Charter, Section 112, it says that A matrimonial home is a property acquired by one or both parties during the course of marriage. Now, if the property is bought before the marriage, must be included in the matrimonial asset during the divorce.
Anything
No,
else?
if you bought before the marriage, I think
Yes.
either party must have contributed to the upkeep, maintenance.
Yeah.
You need to prove that it was occupied by the couple and their children. So it must be substantially improved by both or one party, either party, financially and non-financially. And in order for it to be included in the matrimonial assets.
That's the grey area lah.
Yeah. So look, Singapore is a small island and there's no way you can keep buying your own place. Now, I'm sure at a certain point there's this encouragement of living together with your parents, having the grandparents there to help you look after the children while you go out to work. Now, if you were to move into either party's parents' place, so doesn't that count as your matrimonial home as well?
I mean, you brought up an interesting point that the grandparents are helping you look after the kids. Your grandparents are letting you, or in that case, the grandparents are letting you stay there rent-free. There's also a cost there, So this to go and outright and claim and say, oh, I'm entitled to half of your 1/3. I mean, I think there needs to be further evaluation and look at it,
But how do you justify the value of your contribution as a spouse or as a husband or as a wife? Is it money, just money, or is it all the blood and sweat that you put into that house? Now, we have heard the term tompang. If I live in your house for 1 year, it's still your house, Kevin, I tompang for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. At the end, where will you say, I stay with my in-laws? Where do you say, I stay in my own home, I brought in my in-laws with me? The ownership still belongs to you or your in-laws, right? So, do you think this is a case of tompang? Because matrimonial house, you need to buy it together. But this is a gift. It was handed over in the deeds. But he doesn't have the full rights to it. How do you give away 1/3 of the value of a house?
You have to sell it.
You need to sell it.
The thing also is, how long does tompang constitute? You see, like if you are married for 1.5 years and then you call it quits, yeah, that's tompang. But if you're married for 3 years or more, can you actually call that tompang?
Some people have to wait for 3-4 years for a BTO flat and they have to live with the in-laws. They still tompang the in-laws for 4 years before they get their own flat. So in the process, if their father-in-law hand over part of the house to him, the ownership is still not his in totality. Right? He's still tompang. What? Unless he assumed the whole house.
But if, let's say, you got married
Yeah.
and then you're living with your parents,
Yes.
and then your father just said, okay, son, let us go to the lawyers and I'll give half the house to you. So I'll put your name to the title deed.
Yeah.
And in 5 years, you and your wife decide to call it quits. So does that mean that half of that deed, which belongs to you, you have to share with your wife, your ex-wife?
How do I share? The space or the money? Or the value of the house?
It has to be money,
Then I need to sell the house.
correct?
What will happen to my dad? See, so it's tricky. It's not an easy matter to resolve, right? Unless they cough up the value of 1/3 of that house at the current time, then you pay your ex-wife the amount of money, but nobody has so much cash in order to give away, right? So I think the issue is importantly is to live independently and live your life. Anything were to happen, then it's easier like that.
So I think there's two things. So we can debate about the divorce and how to split the matrimonial assets. But I think the other more important thing, and which is different in our current society, is financial independence. It doesn't mean that you have to be single, but you can still be independent or be prudent. You can build up your own insurance, you can build up your own investments, even if you're married. So I think this day and age, we are not in the old days where only the husband goes to work and women have to stay home. They have no access to work, they have no access to financial advice, stuff like that. In this day and age, it's different. Men and women have equal rights. Access to opportunities, access to financial advice, and we can invest, we can work, we can do sidelines, whatever, and not just leave it up to my spouse to do everything. So I think it's important that we go in, or we grow, either single or as a married couple, to have that kind of mindset. And then I think it will help, especially in such circumstances. I'm not saying that to know how much I try to swindle or inherit from the death of my father-in-law or what, but I'm talking about being able to say, hey, yes, I have contributed, or I'm willing to contribute financially. That means I go and work. I'm willing to contribute non-financially by staying at home. Because by staying at home, I'm helping my spouse to focus on his or her job. I'm losing opportunity. I could have been earning 10 times more. So I think that's a discussion that a couple should have, and should have that maturity to talk about. This is beyond the prenup. I think this is just sitting down and respecting one another.
Yeah, but still, the marriage becomes technical.
I mean, we live in a day and age where everything is black and white, contracts. Even if it's non-black and white, when it goes to the courts, it becomes very technical already.
I would like to propose that the law should be amended on how do you convert the non-tangible effort or values into numbers. So like I put 10 hours of work, a support child, then you just take, then the numbers convert. So this is your contribution. Because right now, you really can't tell.
I think there is a matrix.
Yeah.
There should be a matrix.
There should be the numbers that you can put in. Then you know how much you contribute. There must be an index or indices that you can work on. Then so this is the value of my contribution. It is not just money. It equates to this amount of money, this amount of hours and effort, like that. Then it's easier.
It's always tricky when it comes to money,
Yes.
Everybody wants. I think that's even in a business world, marriage, friends, and most recently, parents suing their child for not having grandchildren. I mean, when it comes to money, I think it has to be that maturity to be smart. Money corrupts. Money brings out the worst in people.
So just like I said, even though we enter the marriage with our eyes wide open, we must also believe the fact, what if something happens? What if my husband passed on? What if my wife passed on? What will happen? So that's when the planning comes about. The ifs, the what ifs are so important. If they had their mind all planned up properly, and I think they would not be facing these issues. What if I'm done after 3 years? What if, like that?
But like I said, no one goes into a marriage
With a divorce
planning for a divorce. Even if you say you're going in with eyes wide open,
Yes.
I would say you go in with your eyes wide shut.
Could be, sometimes people are so in love they can't see anything.
Yes. So unless, you see, the woman has a choice. The man also has a choice. The woman can choose to continue with her career and leave the rearing of the child to a helper or to the in-laws, or the woman has the choice to give up her career until a certain time when the children are of certain age. She can always go back, or she can choose not to. And yes, that's the choice. But then again, if there's the breakup of the marriage, there is still that need to actually calculate how much you have contributed whether financially or non-financially, to the marital assets. Like the children, for example, who gets custody? How long do you share custody, or do you get full custody? Are your children your assets or your liabilities? And in this case, my husband chose to live with his parents. Let's say I have no choice because I love him so much that I went with him according to what he says. And should there be a breakup, so what's my payback?
For your sacrifice,
Yes.
staying with him in his in-laws, in your in-laws.
Yeah. So what's my part of the sacrifice in that sense?
Well, I think it's so hard to say because that's love. Because of love, you actually joined him with his parents. But shouldn't you also propose the fact that, I will stay with your parents, but let's buy our small home together somewhere, but we still stay with your parents. So anything to happen, then we have our own home. We can rent it out. Blah 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 blah.
Anything happens, they will go after the home and also the parents' house. I think we have become so calculative, so selfish that we just want to make sure we get
but
a fair treatment.
Is there a fair in separation? Somebody will win a little bit more than the other, or at least they think, oh, you get a little bit more, I get lesser, like that. Everybody thinks they put in a lot more effort than the other party.
No, so then that's the question I want to ask. Is it all about how much effort you put in, and then you want to claw back? Or is it an issue about, hey, we are going our separate ways, but I need money to look after the kids. I need money to help me jumpstart my career because I had sacrificed staying at home. So which are we looking at?
Maybe if they say nicely, they will be able to sit down on a table and negotiate, but usually it's a lot of anger, and that triggers like no, don't, zero, like that.
So I think they must understand when two couples or two individuals go in for this, I think there is a reason, I think there are three reasons. One, you're selfish, you really want to get as much as you can for yourself. And the other is you really need the money, either because you are given custody and stuff. And the last one is you want to get started again. You are left out of a environment which you have been so accustomed to for so long, and then you need to jumpstart. So I think we have to look at it as three different and maybe scenarios, and maybe the authorities have to look at granting the amount based on those three, which I think they do lah.
I think the formula for starting over should have some basic numbers lah.
Yeah.
In order for someone to rebuild their life independently, there must be some basic numbers for both husband and wife, right? So then divide the money accordingly to their needs lah.
Yeah.
I think it's just a proposal, but I don't think there is a proper algebra to that. It's a very complex thing. It's hard. It's really
Usually
really
the children are given to the mothers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's our next topic. Can fathers bring up kids?
so in this case in point, let's say, if the mother leaves because the house after all belongs to her in-laws, so she goes out and she rents a place and she's not getting half of whatever her husband was given. Now, would she not need things like child support, alimony?
I think that's a separate, right? Maintenance and from matrimonial assets division lah. But it still contributes lah.
And do you think, okay, if that's the case, then why did the divorce court decide to give her the half of his third, only to have the appellate court take it back?
It's the perception, the reading of the law. I think the court in the first round that gave the assets is based on precedence.
Based on pattern.
Yeah, based on pattern, what was done before. Whereas the appeals court actually had
To dig
the duty to go deeper, and they had more time, and to look at the consequences, the how the house was given to the son, in which manner, which is inherited, but only after they pass away. But I think like what Adi mentioned, ultimately it is the parents' matrimonial home. What are you doing trying to take it?
Still the parents' matrimonial house. You need to define the term matrimonial house. It must be yours first. Ownership. Because in this case, right, it's still the in-laws' house, not hers. But I still think that she deserves a lot more to rebuild her life, right? Maybe not 1/3 of the assets, but she deserves accordingly, like how the court would justify for her to rebuild her life. Maybe the alimony, be it the maintenance, whatever. Then I think she deserves all that. But beyond that, I can't say that she's a victim or the husband is being victimized by this. It's a very isolated matter, and it doesn't fall into common pattern. But I know there are people who goes through the same issue, the same formula. So there's no one fixed solution for this. We can't tell.
So I mean, just to clarify, in Singapore law, all the races are all governed by the common law and the Women's Charter, right? All right.
They are all protected.
They're all what?
Protected.
Unless the divorce was the woman's fault.
Which is hard to prove.
I don't think it's hard to prove. If the man is determined enough, I think it can be proven. But ultimately, usually the custody of the child goes to the mother.
So a key thing is still financial independence, financial literacy. I think we live in a very dynamic, sophisticated digital age where you just need to know your rights. You need to be prepared independently for anything, and it's not easy to live in Singapore.
It's true. So in order to resolve this, you just need to make sure that stay with the marriage till the end of it. Make the best of your marriage. You fight, you don't fight, you talk, you do whatever, and keep the marriage alive. Because it's not easy living with someone else, be it your wife or your husband or your kids. There's always some new element. You need to compromise, you need to cope, you need to be kind, and you need to be kinder as you grow older, as you have more kids. Tolerance is such a big thing. I have to start within the family nucleus itself.
Easier said than done.
Nothing is easy, right? But a happy wife means a happy life. So I think that should be the motto for a lot of men.
Do you agree?
No. It's a different world that we live in. And I agree in terms of the respect. But I think everybody needs that independence. I'm not saying you plan to divorce, but you just need to be aware. I mean, we all buy insurance, we have our own coverage, we stay on top of things that would help us, help the family, help the children. We cannot just wash our hands and say, hey, no, I'm a stay-home person, I don't get involved. Finance all done by someone else. I think you're just setting up to fail.
I think couples should go through the process of what if A, B, C, D happens? What if? The what ifs are so important. You can discuss this openly like a true adult, then at least you know what to do if anything were to happen.
Pre-marriage counseling.
Yeah.
So now we know, stick in it, don't get divorced, but
Buy your own house.
Buy your own house.
Live on your own. Be independent.
And don't take your grandparents'
For granted.
property.